Hey everybody, this is Dennis Domzalski here, author of Disturbers Row, and of course you are on the Disturbers Row channel. And as you can see in the background, I'm I'm coming to you from my plush corporate headquarters that I have cleverly disguised as a garage. Why? Well, when you're successful as I am, people get envious, and they're going to say, "Oh, look at his office. He's got a lot of money. Why didn't you give that money to the poor? Why don't you give that money to me, to us?" And so basically, if I showed off all the money, that I've made, well, I don't think people would like it anyway. So there you go. My plush corporate headquarters disguised cleverly as my garage. Hey, again, several videos. What I want to do with this channel, and of course, what I wanted to do with the book Disturbers Row, is give people an idea of what life was once like. And when I was writing it, I realized that there are two elements to it. There's the disturbers causing trouble and the crazy nuns and stuff like that. But I also realized that the freedom we had as kids didn't exist anymore. It certainly didn't exist for my kids. Uh, and growing up where we did, the city of Chicago, Logan Square, blue collar, working class, ethnic neighborhood, a city of 3.5 million people at the time. And I'll get into some of that all later, but excuse me, I've got a bit of a cough. Uh, but I wanted to give people an idea of what things were really like, and particularly the freedom that we had. Because again, it doesn't exist anymore. So, as kids, we were free basically from, I'm going to say, second, third grade on to do anything that we wanted to do when we roamed around. When we went outside, there was really only one rule on weekends and in summer, and in the summer days. You leave the house in the morning after breakfast, maybe some cereal, cornflakes, or something like that, and make sure you're home. You got to be home by supper. Supper was about 5 o'clock, and so the rest of the day, we were off by ourselves, doing absolutely anything and everything. And in this, I'm going to break this up into a couple of videos because, one, I think people don't necessarily have long attention spans these days, and it's pretty difficult to upload a really lengthy video to YouTube. So I'm just going to give you a few of these in this one, and then do a couple of other videos and really maybe get into some detail. But again, what the idea is, letting people like me, I mean, people of my generation know what I'm talking about. But maybe there are people out there, and I'm kind of hoping so, whether it be my kids or younger generation who might see this and maybe realize they missed out on something. Or maybe crazed parents right now who are hovering over their kids, who've got them in, organized sports, who got them taking, piano lessons, violin lessons, organ lessons, clarinet lessons, whatever. Maybe they should lighten up and let them be kids and let them learn to solve problems on their own with other kids and socialize like that. I think that goes a long way. I think it went a long way in our cases to really helping us, grow into what most of us became pretty I'll say halfway decent adults. So let's do a couple of things here. Oh, here's the great thing. So this is what I really want to do first, and I thought of leading the video off with this, but then no one would get it. So remember, 1950s, 1960s. Guess what? There are none of these. No cell phones, no internet, no email, no text messaging, no video games, no video games at all. All we had in the house was one single telephone, which was a rotary phone. It means you had to dial it. And you put your finger in the hole in the dial, you turn it, and it hits a stop, and then you release it, and it goes as it goes back. And you dial 7-digit number that way. And that, you know, maybe took 10, 15 seconds to actually dial a phone number. One phone plugged into a wire in the wall. Basically couldn't really move the phone. And you could move the phone a little, maybe for a few feet. And it did have a long cord for the receiver end of it. But that was it. And often we had what were called party lines. That means a lot of people. There was more than one person, you know, sharing the wire, if you will. Maybe several households. And sometimes if you picked up the receiver and you wanted to make a call, you'd hear voices. You'd hear people talking. Yeah, I suppose you could listen in, but most of the time you just hung up. So that means they're on the phone. And if they were on that line, you could make a phone call at that time. We wrote letters to each other. If you wanted to maybe communicate with someone who was kind of far away, different state, maybe across town because you couldn't get to them, you write a letter on a sheet of paper with a pen, ink, maybe pencil. You put it in an envelope, put a stamp on it, take it to the blue mailbox on the corner, dump it in there, and there, you know, postman comes and gets it, and in a couple of days, the other person gets it. So that's kind of how we communicate. But, so here's one of the things I wanted to start this out with. So, how did we call our friends out? Say we wanted to go play. Say they froze Kosciuszko Park, Kosciuszko Park as it's called, in the winter, and so we could ice skate and play hockey. Or say we just wanted to get a softball game together. Or say you just walked out of the house, you didn't see anybody around, you just didn't want to be alone, so you went out and called the pal. Well, it was very easy. Again, you didn't call them on the telephone. There was no email, no internet, no cell phone, no text messaging. So you walked out your backyard into the alley, walked down around to where your friend's house was, kind of opened the gate, the backyard gate, walked a little way in to the yard, and then put your hands to your mouth and go, "Yo, Bob! Yo, Steve! Yo, Mike! Yo, Ed! Yo!" And you did that long enough and loud enough until someone heard you. And you're standing out there, either by the alley or halfway in the yard. And then, if they heard you, you know, someone's going to hear you, right? If you're loud enough and you do it long enough, you do it for, you know, several minutes, someone's going to hear you, either the parents or whatever, the kid. Anyway, so the kid would come out, you know, raise a window or something like that. "Yeah, what do you want? Hey, can you come out and play? Yeah, I'll be right out." Kaboom! Then you two go to someone else's house, to another pal's house. You do the same thing. "Yo, Bob! Yo, Dave!" That's how we called each other out, and that's how we often met our pals, or got to meet our pals. I'm going to get into a couple of things here, just again about the freedom we have. But I think, and again, I want people to know, especially the younger generation, this is what life is. This is what we did. This is how we grew up. And to the crazed parents who are hovering over their kids right now, why don't you lighten up? Because we lived like this, basically with almost total freedom. And you know what? We turned out okay. We didn't get poisoned. We didn't get kidnapped. We didn't get this. We didn't turn into monsters. Blah, blah, blah. So, you know, beginning in, I'm going to start with Halloween. Halloween was a wonderful time, and you know, there were kids everywhere in the city of Chicago. You got to understand, in the neighborhood I lived in, nothing but 2, 3 flat frame and brick houses. A flat in a 2-flat frame is about 900 square feet. There's 2 of them to a building, and a family lives in each one on the first floor, one on the second floor. Then you got an attic, and you also have a basement where you can store stuff, do laundry, and some of those basements actually had apartments in them as well. So I grew up in a 950, I'll say, square foot apartment. There were 4 kids. 4 of us, five, 4. 4 kids grew up in a 950 square foot apartment. 1 bathroom, no shower, just a bathtub, 1 toilet, 2 pretty small bedrooms, a kitchen, pantry, a living room, dining room. And you know what? We survived. We didn't have our own room. Three boys, me and my 2 brothers. We all slept in the same bedroom all through it, through high school, through college, whatever. But beginning in with with Halloween, so first or second grade, or even before that, we'll say about 4 years old, or from the time you can walk, you're going to go out with your older brothers or sisters, and then for the first couple of years, but there are no parents around. There's massive, I'm not going to say gangs, but clods of kids up and down these streets, because there are kids everywhere. It's the middle of the baby boom. We're part of the 74 million kids that were born in those 18, 20 years. And they're everywhere. And we're climbing up the stairs to the front steps to houses, ringing the doorbells, getting candy. You ring the doorbell to the first floor, someone comes down, give you candy. You ring the doorbell to the second floor, someone comes down, gives you more candy. An apartment building, a 6-flat or a 3-flat, man, you make a haul if they're home and they're going to give you candy. But that's the cool thing about it. There are kids everywhere. A lot of people got a lot of stuff. But beginning, I'd say in 2nd or 3rd grade was when you'd start going out by yourself with your own pals. So you didn't need your older brothers or sisters anymore. So 2nd and 3rd grade. 2nd grade, made first Holy Communion. We live about 4 blocks from the school/church. And I remember that Sunday morning. I remember pretty clearly. I walked to the church by myself. We had to get there early for some, and then the parents and all the relatives would come. Had to get there by myself, walk there. 4 blocks. No big deal to me, but I don't think any kid would be allowed to do that today. I was in 2nd grade, so I would have been 7, 8 years old, something like that. 3rd grade, me and my buddy Jim Massiola, we're roaming around. We're crossing busy streets. Chicago's got busy streets. Every main arterials, they would be called today. Anyway, we're going in 3rd grade along the railroad tracks to play, and I'll talk about the tracks later. We're playing in vacant lots surrounded by factories, strewn with junk. We're playing in the back lots of factories. My brother Steve and one of his pals, there were a set of railroad tracks not too far, block and a half away. We'd put rocks on the railroad tracks. I'm talking 3rd grade. Pennies to have the train smash them. A lot of commuter trains going by in Chicago. My brother Steve and a pal of his, Dave Honacki, they came across a railroad pump car, one of those old-fashioned things that you see in the cartoons. It was lying in the mud by a railroad spur. And they spent several Saturday afternoons all by themselves trying to dislodge that thing and get it onto the tracks. They had no idea where they would go or what they would do if they ever got it onto the tracks, but they did. Ellie's. The Ellie's, 16 feet wide in Chicago, and that's where people put their trash. Their garages open into the alleys. That's where they pull their cars out. But the alleys were our playgrounds as well. 16 feet wide. We would actually play softball in the alleys. Softball with a 16-inch soft ball, a ball. It wasn't actually very soft if it was brand new. But imagine that. You're 8, 9 years old. You got your baseball bats out. You're playing in an alley that's only 16 feet wide. It's flanked by garages, sometimes fences and open backyards. And for the houses that didn't have garages, they just had the backyard, a gate, a fence, and a backyard. And so you had to learn to hit a ball straight. Because if you hit it crooked, or you veered it off, it's in somebody's yard. And a lot of these people had dogs and blah blah blah. And no one's going to go. You don't want to go into a yard with a dog. And then if you hit it in somebody's yard, a lot of crazy old people always get angry. Why don't you go to the park and play? Why are you playing in the alley? And why are you making noise? And the hell with them. We had a place. There was a CTA, Chicago Transit Authority, the public transit system in Chicago. They had a bus barn in an industrial area, not too far from us, again by the railroad tracks and by a bunch of other factories, and they stockpiled salt, rock salt there, so that in the winter, once it snowed and the streets slushed up, they would put salt down to melt the slush, the ice, the snow, and then keep everything moving. Well, this pile was enormous. I mean, just an enormous pile of salt. And we played on it. I mean, that was a favorite place to go on Saturdays. I don't know how tall, maybe, I really have no idea how tall it would have been. I just can't even give you the dimensions, but we called it a mountain, and it was certainly big for us as kids. And we played guns and war. We'd roll down the mountain pretending, if we were shot, poof, and we'd roll down the mountain, and we tried digging foxholes in it. We'd pretend to ski down it thinking it was snow. There was all kinds of goofy stuff. And by fourth grade, most of us were pretty much roaming everywhere in our neighborhood. Not just a couple of blocks away from the house, not just in the alleys up and down, but several blocks. We'd go a mile to Milwaukee Avenue to just goof off, to walk, to hang out, walked everywhere. There's the other thing that we did. Big difference between how we grew up and what kids do today. We walked everywhere and ran. Most of us really didn't have bicycles until we were, probably a little older. Families back then had one car. I don't know a single family in my entire neighborhood that had two cars. The dad was off with the car at work, and the mom was usually at home, tending the house and doing all that stuff. So we walked everywhere. And I have an aunt. She's no longer with us, Aunt Soph. She grew up in the Avondale neighborhood, which is just north of Logan Square. Well, I was talking to her one day, several years ago, and she just blurted out, when we grew up, there were no fat kids. There just weren't any fat kids. And I laughed and said, Aunt Soph, okay, there are no fatzos. And she was basically right. There are a couple of chubby kids, but there weren't any, not like today where you see kids or there really weren't any fat or obese or overweight adults. Why? Well, basically as kids, we walked everywhere. We were constantly outside. We were not in front of a computer playing a video game or anything like that. Adults, men, usually I'll say most of them had pretty physical jobs, often working in factories, doing stuff like that. So we used a lot of energy and burned a lot of calories. So I'm going to continue on with these. That's just a little bit of it, and I'll get into more things the next one. But I wanted to give you guys a little about that. And if you guys are of my generation, you know what I'm talking about. Leave some examples of what you guys did. Leave them down in the comments section, or give me a call or whatever. But I want to let the younger people know, and their goofy parents, this is how we did it. We were independent, and we survived. So, people, have fun out there. Buy Disturbers Grow. Have fun. Bye-bye.